Hello, friends on LinkedIn Live. Great to be with you. Jim Collison. I'm here with Sar of a Tree. We're taking a few minutes to get started. It takes a little bit of time for everybody to kind of get in and get going. If you're joining us right now and you can hear me say this, we'd love for you to put your top five in chat. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that, how that relates to the Great Resignation today. But let us know either like where you're listening from or your top five. Sarv, what are your top five?
That'll be strategic, positivity, competition, responsibility, and futuristic.
Oh, that's good. That's a good set. Arranger, Woo, Maximizer, Communication, Activator. We'd love to throw that in. I'm coming from Bellevue, Nebraska, which is a suburb of Omaha. Sarv, where are you coming in from today?
Well, I live in Singapore, but I'm coming in from New Delhi.
Yeah,
So excited to
nice.
be here.
Yeah, super early in the morning for you, and thanks for waking up to do. Your body's probably all messed up on from a time perspective, but thanks for coming in. Marina's checking in from Sunnyvale, so thanks for doing that. Yeah, Sacramento is checking in as well. We'd love to ask you this question as we get started here. Have you been impacted by the Great Resignation? You know, we've talked a little bit. We spent a lot of time talking about COVID, but now in this area of, and I'm calling it, you know, the Great Migration. We've called it the Great Discontent at Gallup. Everybody's kind of having their thoughts on this. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking about this in a second, but we'd love to hear from you. How have you been affected by it personally, or has it affected you? Mark's checking in from Michigan. Yeah, good. You guys are doing a great job. Throw your top five out there, and we'll get started here in just a second. Thanks for coming out. I think I saw Calgary, Canada, checking in. Our Canadian friends up there. We get a lot from Canada, which is pretty great. Auckland, New Zealand, checking in. Appreciate that. Sue's doing that. Greetings from Megan coming in from Memphis. Megan, thanks for joining us as well. What's how's the weather there in Delhi, in New Delhi today?
Well, it's just perfect. It's 17, 18 degrees Celsius. It's
Nice.
nice and chilly. You'd like that kind of a cold. And
Yeah.
I'm coming from Singapore, 3 years there already, as in 10 years total. But Singapore doesn't have any kind of chill weather. This is like chill weather.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Good stuff. Well, keep checking in, keep letting us know where you're listening from. Again, the question we kind of have out there is, how have you been impacted? You can be putting this in as we go. How have you been impacted by this great resignation, this great migration, this great kind of change in the work culture? Sarv's got some great stuff to do. Sarv, let's get started on this. I think we've got enough folks listening. Continue to put where you're listening from in your top five, and maybe how you've been impacted by the Great Resignation. Let me start this for the podcast. Here we go. I am Jim Collison. I'm here with Sarv a Tree, and Sarv, great to be with you today for this topic.
Thank you, Jim, and it's a pleasure to be back. And I just want to say thank you to all the people who are logging in live. I say the greatest gift you can give anybody is your time and attention. So we are grateful for your time because that's the biggest constraint in life. But we want to make sure this time is useful for each one of you. So let's make this into an experience that you'll remember forever.
Yeah,
Jim.
we'd love to interact with you. So if you want to continue to put stuff in chat, we'll be putting that on the screen. For those that are listening in the podcast form, we'll be reading some of those out as well. Sarv, let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us kind of your top five and what you do for Gallup.
Thank you, Jim. And well, my top five CliftonStrengths themes are strategic, positivity, competition, responsibility, and futuristic. And I work with Gallup in Singapore. Uh, been here 10 years, completing 10 years, another 10 days with Gallup, and it's been a privilege. I work specifically with leaders across Asia Pacific and Middle East and Europe, helping them create engaged workplaces. And also, I'm an executive coach on Clifton Strengths. So I've had the privilege of coaching and training 3,000 executive coaches over the last 8 years since we've launched our flagship program called the Accelerated Strengths Coaching Course. Then and now it's moved to the Global Strengths Coaching Course. And over these years, work with very large organizations in organizational change, culture, transformation. With organizations like Accenture, who's one of my key clients as well, and many other great organizations. And primarily, my role is really helping them create insights that transforms business. Coach leaders as well, but that's what I get excited by is
Great.
change.
We're really glad you're with us today as we talk about this. We the topic kind of day is the Great Resignation. I mentioned we have titled it the Great Discontent in an article that we have published, and actually you and I have had the privilege of podcasting on this topic through Called to Coach. I'm kind of calling it the Great Migration. Everybody's got kind of a term. Let's reset for this. What are we talking about here before we dive into how to get through it?
Thank you, Jim. And yes, you've heard this statement come across all around the world. It's a hot topic. CHROs are talking about this. They're saying, hey, how do we manage this workforce uh, transition that's happening in the industry right now? People are calling it the great resignation. Some are calling it the great reshuffle. Some are calling the big quits, the great migration. And I think about this, if you really go deeper, what's really going on? Essentially, the great resignation is an ongoing trend where employees are voluntarily leaving their jobs. And this is an important comment. It's a voluntary leaving jobs. And it's not just great, attrition happens and people leave jobs and they join new ones. What's different about this? Here's what's different. A lot of people are leaving the organizations, but they're not rejoining the workforce. And that's why it's called the great resignation. Resignation is when you leave, but you don't go back to the same company or any other company for that matter. And this is not just an American phenomenon, which started in the US back in February of 2020. But if you look at the trend in November of 2021, Jim, there were over 10.5 million jobs that were available in the US alone. And even though you might say, hey, 6.7 million people got rehired, however, during that period, just the month of November I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
6.3 million people quit or separated from their jobs. Some were laid off, others had other kind of issues that they left. But what's even more important is 4.3 million people voluntarily quit. So you see, right? 10.5 million jobs, 6.7 million getting hired, 6.3 million leaving. The gap is not good enough to fill that workforce gap that is happening, and that is increasing, and that's a sign of worry.
mm-hmm,
Let's put it in a practical sense. Imagine there's a Pizza Hut with 10 people employed in that Pizza Hut who are serving customers, making the food, and now four people have quit that outlet. The work hasn't gone down, people are still eating pizzas. Imagine the pressure it puts the remaining six under. And this is why I say no matter how much they might love their job, those six people, the pressure is a bit too much. And that would
mm-hmm.
create even more attrition in that organization. That's why it is an area of concern. And that's why I'm calling this the new pandemic. Because this is not just an American phenomenon anymore. It's a global phenomenon. It's happening. The same thing is happening in Asia, in Philippines, in Malaysia, in Singapore, in other places where there are more jobs than people available to fill those jobs.
Mm.
That's how I reframe the great resignation as the great discontent, Jim.
Yeah, a lot of moving around in that, and a lot of reasons why. Well, let's tie in Clifton strengths when we think about, because that's what we're here to do today. Talk a little bit about that. That's why is Clifton strengths, and how does this fit into what we're talking about today with this?
Great. Well, if one of the reasons why, leaders, CHRs, and whoever I'm speaking with within an organization are paying attention to this is because they want to retain people, their top
Mhm.
talent, because what is the workforce? What is an organization? It's people, isn't it? So if people are important to us, and the more I talk to leaders, Jim, everybody's talking about the future of the workplace and strategic planning for what that would look like in the future. And right now, this is top of mind for them. So if I want to understand how to retain people, I need to study success, isn't it? So let's ask people here. I like all of you to think about the best workplace
Mm.
you all have worked at, because clearly you stayed back in those workplaces for many years. So I'd like you to go to the comments and write down the characteristics of that great workplace. What made that place the best place for you to work? Why did you stay back? Or if you're in that workplace today, what makes you stay back in those organizations? Let's go to the chat and let's make this into a fun experience and an interactive experience. You've seen enough YouTube videos, you scroll through them, and nothing changes from all those videos you've seen. The only thing that changes is when this is an experience for you. So I encourage all of you to go to the chat and write down what what was the great workplace you worked at and what made that place the best workplace for you.
Mm. Sorry, we're waiting for those to come in, and you're looking about this as we think about maybe some strategies moving forward. As we think about leaders, I mean, managers are really under fire, right? They're being held accountable in these organizations. to keep people around, to keep teams intact, right? They're under fire. Any thoughts as we get these best practices, these why people stayed coming in? Any tips for managers or some things to think about that they can implement right away, especially with Clifton Strengths?
Absolutely, Jim. And this is where it becomes even more important. If you see the words that are coming through, empowering humanity, provided me the opportunity to learn and grow and develop, they say, right, people join companies, but they quit managers. We should ask why. Why is it that they quit a manager? Because what's interesting about all these comments that are coming in, Jim, right now is I'm not hearing there were free, coffees or chocolates in those workplaces. There were bean bags, or there was a really beautiful building. There were parks outside. I'm not hearing all of those things. I bet they would have that also, but clearly that's not the most important things for people. What I'm hearing is I was empowered. I love the people I work with. There was a great chemistry that I had. I was achieving success. There was a lot of closeness, as Rebecca is talking about. There was authenticity. And that's why I say, right, if you look at all these factors are within the span of control of the manager and the team they're working with. And that's why I say why managers play such a big role in retention is because what we are hearing from people here and what we're hearing from people worldwide, it's that their needs were not fulfilled. And that's what made them quit. And when those needs were fulfilled for people, they stick around. And for me, when I look at Clifton Strengths, I say Clifton Strengths is a deeper understanding of human needs. Let's take this as an example for people to see it. So, say, for example, and this is a question for all of you, say, for example, you have a colleague of yours or even your team member with context as their top strength. And Jim, you can share back the screen for us for people to see it. I would like to ask you guys, if you have a team member with high context, what do you think that person's need is for that person to be at their best in a meeting? What's their need that'll make them feel fulfilled? Go to the chat and write down your answers, folks.
What's that? Read that for those Star of listening just to the podcast. Read our
Great.
definition there of context.
So, people who have high context as a top signature theme, they are exceptionally talented in the context theme, enjoy thinking about the past, and they understand the present by researching its history. So, what's the need of context? Relevant background for discussion and decision. And what do they bring to a conversation, to a team? Is accurate memories and valuable memorabilia. And this is where it becomes interesting. You feed that past information, how we got here, what happens in their brain? It releases a chemical called dopamine. They feel good about it because you've just fed that need. Now, if you don't give that history to that person with high context, they'll be clueless. Like, I have no idea how we got here. I have no idea how do we go forward, because they make sense of the present by thinking about the past. Now, let's take another example. You have someone with high futuristic as a top strength. Tell me, what do you guys think that person would need from you in a meeting for that person to be at their best? And for people who are listening in, what is futuristic? When somebody has high futuristic as their top Clifton Strengths theme, they are exceptionally talented in the futuristic theme, are inspired by the future and what could be. They energize others with the visions of the future. What they need is an opportunity to talk about the foreseen future. If they don't have clarity of where their career and their life is going through, they'll feel discontented. And then they're like, maybe this is not a place for me. And they go looking for places which gives them that stability and a surety. And that's why I say when you think about Clifton Strengths, it gives you deep insights into
Mm.
the psychological needs of people. This gives you deep insights into what creates hope for people, what creates stability for people, what creates compassion and trust. That's why I say Clifton Strengths is just not, it's not just any other tool. It's a language of humanity, a language of compassion, a language of hope, a language of stability, a language of trust with people. Jim.
Sarav, clarity is not always possible in the future. We live in that world. I mean, it's always kind of been this way. It's been really difficult the last couple years. But a manager knowing that they need to provide, or that from a team perspective, provide that with somebody with high futuristic, how do they go about that when they can't give a clear? I mean, 2 years ago this month, right? The world was changed when a lot of folks exited the workplace to work from home. We didn't know what the future would look like. So what can you do as a manager in that circumstance when you can't predict it, but folks need it?
And that's a great comment there, Jim. And that's why I say involvement is the key. You don't need to give hope to
Mm,
people. You can create hope through meaningful conversation by involving people. Hey guys, what do you think we can do over this next
mm,
6 months to create the best workplace we can create for ourselves? And when people say, you know what, let's get into a regular catch ups where we talk about something beyond work. And I'll give you some best practices. I was doing this work with this NGO, which is a big NGO out of India, one of the largest NGOs with the biggest contribution to cancer research in India. And it's interesting, Jim. Imagine the pressure they're under. There's COVID outside. They have to be on the grassroots in villages, trying to take care of people with cancer, care services. Imagine the pressure they are going through. So, how does a manager manage the expectations of people who are facing just these complexities from all sides? Here's what they do. Every Friday for 30 minutes, they get on a call and they talk about everything else other than work.
mm,
That's a human connection happening right there.
mhm,
So it's
mhm,
if you think about this, what's the challenge with the virtual world today is the physical environment provided that human connection. You know why people set up these, pool tables and all? It's not about the pool table. It's when I engage with somebody, that human interaction, all my senses are involved. That is being eliminated in a hybrid world. Now,
mhm,
let's be honest about this. We get on a call with somebody else, hey, how are you? How's your family doing? Everything's going okay for 5 minutes. And then
mhm,
we go into a conversation. Where's the human connection?
mhm,
Versus in the physical space, when you sit down with somebody, have lunch. When you have lunch with somebody, the kind of information your senses are gathering, their styles, what they like, what they don't like,
mm,
the kind of food they eat, there's so much information that we miss that we are gathering that creates that feeling of connection,
mm,
that feeling of engagement. And that's why I say engagement is not an external phenomenon. Engagement is an internal experience. The stimuli of that could be outside, but it's still a feeling people have
mm,
inside them. And managers need to measure what creates that feeling. Clifton Strengths gives us really good insights into human needs that remove the let me guess what that is. It gives you key clear insights. Why wouldn't you measure it to manage it? Q12, our engagement surveys, that gives deep insights into workplace needs of people. And that's what you'll see, right? What made that great workplace for you, you'll see here as well. If I sort of share, think about the Q12 as workplace needs, you'll see how that translates into your work and what made that place the best place for you to work as well here. So have a look at this. Jim, you can share the Q12 workplace needs as well, tied back to Clifton Strengths. It's a two powerful tools to help you manage this challenge in the workplace right now. So
Talk
if you think about this,
sort of talked a little bit about the when we think about Q1, 2, and 3 and how those fit into these basic needs we have. Again, for those folks listening on audio, can you kind of just quickly walk us through that?
yes. So if you think about, we've measured workplace needs over the last 30 years and been researching this for the past 5 decades. What we found out, we can actually break down workplace needs into four big categories: basic needs, individual needs, teamwork, and growth. And it's similarly mapped to Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well there. If you think about within those basic needs, individual, teamwork, and growth, we ask a question in our survey, you know, um, I know what's expected of me at work. And when you think about that question, it's clarifying expectation. The need behind that question is focus me on something. If people are not clear what they're supposed to do on a daily basis, they'll be like headless chickens running around. And you'll be surprised 50% of people show up at work not having clarity of what they're supposed to do, not clarity, having clarity of expectation. How do you perform if you don't even know what my top priorities for this
Mhm,
week are? Because let's be honest, everything you do on a daily basis, is it exactly matched to your job
mhm,
descriptions? What about the stuff that John put on my desk today that's never mentioned in my job description? Would I have to do it or not do it?
mhm,
I'm not sure. So this is where clarity of expectations is a fundamental need from the
mhm,
workplace environment. If that gets
mhm,
fulfilled, I will be clear on what I'm supposed to do. That's not fulfilled, I'll be like a headless chicken. So that's why I say if you think about these 12 needs or focus me on something, well, expectations, materials and equipment, free me from unnecessary stress is a need behind that question, and so on and so forth. The real insight is this. If think of this 12 needs as a pyramid, and you don't focus on the base of the pyramid, the bottom six needs of focus me, free me from stress, know me for what I do well, help me see my value, which is recognition, care about me, help me grow. Whereas you're fulfilling the top needs only, which is challenge me, give me challenging work, or send me for trainings only, and help me review my contributions. The pyramid will get inverted. And with
Mm,
an inverted pyramid, it topples over. That's why people leave companies when
mm.
they have no clarity, they're not feeling valued, they're not in the right job, they're not being developed. And you can hear all these comments. What made people stay is exactly mapped to what we are just talking about right now, Jim.
Sorry, we got a question from chat. Teresa says, for international teams, how do you create a human engagement when you can't get together for a meal? I have a story on this as well, but sorry, let me throw that to you. How do you do that when you can't physically get together?
This is a great question there, Teresa. And this is why I say think about human experience is engaging all our senses. Now, in the virtual world, it becomes hard because we only have two senses involved, which is eyes and the sound. So, what I say is think about creating organizational memories. I say, the last 2 years, what do you really remember from work versus 3, 4 years ago when you were in person, right? And the moments you capture in the last 2 years that really sticks in your brain and you would want them to stick for the next 5 years, I call those organizational moments and organizational memories. So you should ask yourself within your culture, what are those moments that stick? Create more of those because that creates that memory, that emotion that sticks. People don't remember what you say, people don't remember what you do, people remember how you make them feel.
Mm.
So focus on that emotion. That is engagement right there, Jim.
Yeah, practically speaking, as soon as folks started going home, I started making and setting up meetings to meet with them to do exactly what you said, not necessarily to be work only, but for an opportunity, especially for those I worked closest with, to just have conversations. And in one case, that individual needed it daily. And so we get together every we still do actually. We, even when we can get back in the office, we still meet on a daily basis. It's what's needed. For others, it was maybe weekly, right? We set up a call on Fridays, or we set up a call whenever it worked. Riley, who's running the behind the scenes here, we started working together during the pandemic, and we set up a regular meeting for that to make sure that we didn't miss. Right now, does that can that always compensate for not being in person? Well, no, of course not. You can't get those same kind of always the same. But I think the regularity behind a lot of that, the discipline to do it on a regular basis, I think some folks were hesitant to do that sort of early on. And man, that was a superpower for me. Like it just changed everything to have these regular scripted calls. And it was okay. Most of the time we talked about personal stuff, right? It's the stuff we would have talked about if we were together.
And Jim, I had some amazing colleagues at Gallup. Robert Gapsa did this what we call a take five, just a 5 minute check-in call, and he called up, hey, sorry, and he's in the US. He called me up late night, his time, says,
Yeah.
hey, sorry, I just want to have a 5 minute chit chat with you to see how you're doing. And I still remember that. So it
Yeah.
doesn't take a long meeting to build a human connection.
Yeah.
It could just be 5 minutes of really authentic conversation there. At an organization level, I've had clients who did durian parties. So durian is a famous fruit in Singapore and Malaysia. And they got the whole office online and they all had yellow clothing. It was a theme party. They had durian together and it sticks in people's brains. Then the same organization, which I have huge respects for, they committed to a social cause, community well-being. They
Mhm.
said, we will donate hair for the Bald and Beautiful initiative for cancer research. And imagine all the top 20 people in the leadership team went bald. That's experience of
Yeah.
its own that people will remember for the rest of their lives. I'm not
Yeah.
saying people have to go bald all the time. The point is that it was all done voluntarily.
Yeah.
That creates connection. You can create similar experiences that creates that unification, that connection towards a common purpose, common cause. That
Yeah.
is engagement.
Just because we were virtual doesn't mean we couldn't eat or drink together. By the way, I did many happy hours that way. It may be in the same time zone. That's kind of key. And I've done meals together with people on video. So yeah, you're spending some time because Don Clifton would say, when we meet together, when we eat together, we meet together. When we meet together, we eat together, right? those are key times. And so finding how that could work and having meals together, even virtually, worked out pretty well. So, if you've got 4 tips that we want to kind of work our way through as we think about strategies that leaders can use to implement Clifton Strengths to to really increase retention. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yes, so 4 things leaders and organizations can do to retain their people. First is measure. Understand your people really well. If you know your organization is high relators, you know they value that one-to-one conversation, they value that human connection. Create more opportunities to fuel that. If you know your organization is highly competitive, competition is the top strength, create contests, they will be driven by that. If you know your organization is high ideation, create a think tank. So the first is measure. If you don't even know, you can't measure it. And you can measure at 3 levels: psychological needs level, which is Clifton Strengths; workplace needs level, which is Q12 and engagement; and well-being needs as well through well-being surveys. That's the first step. Measure. Second is coach. And here's why coaching becomes even more important, Jim, in the modern environment. I say right now, people's expectations from society, from the world, are not being met. They expect to travel, they expect to meet with family. I was just talking to a couple of leaders in coaching calls just last couple of days in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is going through some really tough times right now. People going to will go through lockdowns, and they'll go through PCR testing, and they won't be able to travel, and that's frustrations. Why? Because whenever our expectations are not met, we get frustrated, isn't it? So it's important to realize that there's a lot of external frustration that are being built into people's lives. So even a small trigger at the workplace could really create a lot of turmoil internally into people's lives. I say, right, engagement is an internal phenomenon. If that is not being fulfilled, it will reflect externally as well there. Coaching gives you an avenue to vent out, release that pressure cooker right there. So that at least there's somebody who's listening to me, understanding me. It's not just a transactional work conversation, it's a human conversation. And this is where managers need to develop coaching capabilities to do just that, to take care of people right now. It's not about just feedback right now, it's about feel back before feedback. That will create a lot of release in pressure. It'll create understanding. And that's why I say coaches are great listeners. That's what we want them to be, right? So this is a time not for talking and telling, this is a time for listening and understanding, because people are going through some really tough times right now. So coaching is the second step that we can think about this. And Clifton Strengths also gives you insight of how to coach people, what to coach people on. It gives them a lot of good energies to help people be the best of who they can be. Third, development. We need to invest as organization in the coaching capabilities of our leaders, of our managers, so they can be there for their people. And also development of our people, individuals. The number one reason why people change their jobs or leave companies is for learning and growth opportunities, career growth opportunities. So if you're not investing in our people, then we're not investing in business. The best leaders invest in people the same way they track the business growth for numbers for their businesses. They track the people growth in the organization. What's this person's skill today? What's the person's skill I want to be in the next 2 years from a workforce planning perspective? That is what I call is building a workplace of the future, where you're paying attention to where your talent is today and where your talent needs to be in the near term, and you're investing intentionally in that area. Growth happens whoever and whatever you give attention to. If you imagine, if you give attention to every employee in your organization and you grow them by 20%, what impact would that have on your business? Because let's be honest, that's all you control. You don't control the external markets, you don't control how the markets are reacting to the war that's happening worldwide. All you control is how I'm taking care of my people. If they are feeling stressed out with what's happening globally, it will impact business. Who's listening to their needs, who's listening to their emotions and managing them? This is where I say fourth step, Jim, is investment. The best workplace needs the meets the needs of the entire employee workforce. Holistic well-being. Invest in people's well-being right now, because that is top of mind for people right out there. Understand how different initiatives worldwide are impacting them. Break the bias is happening. So don't just assume anything. Ask, ask,
Mhm.
ask, and listen
Mhm.
to your people's needs. And that's where I say, when people and leaders invest in human impact, it creates business impact. Jim.
Mm. Saurav, just a reminder, again, those are measure, coach, develop, and invest. And actually, not a bad personal strategy either. You can look at those as your own. What am I doing to measure my own growth? What am I doing to make sure I'm getting coaching? What am I doing for my own personal development? And what am I doing to invest in myself? I love that it works on both. Sarv, we got maybe about 30 seconds left. Give us your best summary in just the final moments here.
Well, here's what I say. When you think about human beings, human beings are both emotional and rational. While we take up the rational side with pay, benefits, experiences, the emotions are the most important aspect today. And if we pay attention to that experience people are going through in life, we can create a great life for people out there. The best leaders focus on people's lives and not just on only work. Because let's be honest, when you're 70 years old and you look back to this time, nobody would remember what targets you've hit, but people will remember how you've changed their life. And this is the time when leadership needs to rise. Leadership is not a position or a title, it's a mindset. Leadership is a mindset. When you believe that the purpose you're working towards is bigger than just you being able to achieve it yourself, you need to inspire people to follow you along. And to inspire people, you need to inspire their hearts to work towards that common goal. So pay attention to people. Jim.
Just a great reminder. And of course, we've got great content for you on the new Clifton Strengths podcast as well. We'll be posting this as well as other LinkedIn Lives, plus our well-being content to it. You can find it on any podcast app. Just search the Clifton Strengths podcast and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Sarv, thanks for joining us today. Always great to be with you. If you're joining us live from LinkedIn, thanks for that as well and your comments and questions. Thanks for coming out. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.